Hello, it's Fran Davidson from psychicandenergywork.com.au, and this is my monthly update for October 2023. How's your month been so far? The update is very much a halfway snapshot based on the current sort of dynamics I've been witnessing, not necessarily because they're the only dynamics in the world, in the hope of providing clarity or perhaps even just, insight about what's been going on, especially if you've been finding life just a bit challenging in these last few weeks. It goes without saying, in Australia, let alone other parts of the world, we've been seeing some pretty amazing developments, some pretty big subjects being raised. Certainly that's not just going on a global or a community level. Individuals seem to be breaking free more and more of dynamics, patterns, customs, positions that have held them back, held them down, held them in. We are all, of course, a party to everything we experience, and spiritual development, I'd argue, true spiritual development is about discovering our role in a situation, in a process, in a way that we become enlightened, practically, consciously enlightened as to not only how we've been contributing to dynamics that we'd like to improve or see shift, but also helps us understand the perspectives of others so as to walk forward perhaps more spiritually, more equitably, more groundedly. At this point, I suppose it's worth remembering that this year is it's a 7 year. Sorry, I was just about to launch into the numbers before I said that bit. So in numerology, there are three main numbers. There's the birth number, there is the MO, or what I call the MO, then there is the reality number. The birth number tells us the what we're about to learn about, break through, come to exemplify and channel again, hopefully on a spiritual level. The MO tells us how we'll do that, and that's why I call it the MO. It's the how we attain such growth. And then the product of the sum of those two numbers is called the reality number. And that highlights the end states, the end results, the outcomes we're likely to achieve spiritually or egoically, depending on our decisions day to day, second by second. As a result of working through the first two dynamics. So 2023 brings us a birth number, 2023, which reduces to 7. The MO, how we're going to do that, is a 108, which reduces to 9. If we add those two numbers up, we get 2131, which is another 7. So at the end of the day, those are the main layers of the year's chart. So you've only got those three levels in a very big picture sense. To have, therefore, 2 7s occupying that chart as end results is a pretty important message. It's a pretty important flag. And why I say that is because 7 is very much the pendulum swing between mind versus, as in self's mind, whether it be my mind, your mind, community mind, group mind, or even just model mind. This is the way we've always done it. So 7 is the pendulum swing between human mind or egoic mind, limited mind. Not necessarily because that's a negative thing, but more hello from the position any of us take. We can only see so far, so wide, so deep. That doesn't necessarily render it negative, but it's still limited. So again, 7 is the pendulum swing between those states, what I know, what I think, what I've come to realize, hopefully in all the good ways. It's the pendulum swing between those things and universal wisdom, the universal perspective. In other words, the big, big picture. Implicit in that, therefore, 7 is a period that through limitation, limited thinking, limited offers, especially on a spiritual level. So it may not be offer in a tangible sense. It could be offer in an information sense. It could even be offer in a behavioral sense. In other words, I am only capable of behaving like this rather than to the fullest of my capabilities if I was more in tune with egoic self. So 7 is a really interesting period because it doesn't really matter whether we're talking a year, a 7 life, a 7 week, a 7 quarter, a 7 month, whatever. 7 often manifests first as the feeling of having to put up with limitation, not necessarily because we're aware of it to begin with. 7, therefore, can feel a bit like detention, time in the classroom, when everybody else is out playing, everybody else is out succeeding, achieving, getting on with their life, looking okay. 7, therefore, can be a time that we start to resent, simply because we know life is capable of more. We know we're capable of more, but for some reason we're being held back. And so 7 is that time that also tends to corner us or limit us in that fashion until such time as we have that sort of aha moment and realize, you know what, I need to clear. I need to come back to myself. I need to let go of all this spin, this negativity, this tension, this stress, fear, whatever the negative or the imbalanced state is. Because remember, we're partly divine and partly egoic. Even though we are one physical I, there are 2 aspects of self. And every second of the day, we have a choice as to which one we allow to drive. That doesn't necessarily mean that every second of the day any of us are fully conscious. I'd argue that's probably impossible. But also, we're not really wired like that. Why? Because it's through the egoic wavelengths. It's through what is not quite right, what doesn't feel as good as it could be. It's through those dynamics that we actually yearn for more, do something about that yearning, and therefore consciously, tangibly, permanently step into that more and help to grow it in the world around us. This last month, September included, not because I'm saying these dynamics began at that point, they certainly didn't, but it's been interesting to see more and more people getting to the point where they can no longer take the patterns that they've been in, or even the patterns that other people have been offering them, even though really on one level, other people are not the problem. That doesn't necessarily mean they don't contribute to the problem. But in a sense, we create the reality we end up in. And of course, again, we're not always fully conscious. We're not always fully awake, fully connected. And so sometimes we can find ourselves in cul-de-sacs or black holes simply because, okay, maybe I wasn't clearing, maybe I wasn't connecting enough to the right energies so as to make sure I could avoid those bits. In this sense, 7 can be seen as a tennis match. It's the tennis match on the human level that can manifest as you versus me, us versus them, exclusivity. And I say tennis match because often in 7 moments, we can find ourselves feeling as if we're just stuck on this court, hitting the same ball backwards and forwards. There seems to be no way out of that tennis match. But that's the whole point. Because on one level, the issue isn't to win on the current court. In a 7 year, to try and win the tennis match called opinion or I want, in a way that mind drives. To do that is to stay stuck on the tennis court. 7 years ask us to take the game to a higher court, to realize that, the game of opinion, of judgment, of limit only continues for as long as we continue to volley the dynamics that we're not enjoying. And so again, 7 moments, irrespective of the time frame, they get us to the point where we realize, in a sense, I can't breathe anymore. I've got to do something about that. And whether that's through, shall we say, an explosion, whether that's because all of a sudden, you know what, I just need to clear. I need to come to stillness again. I need to meditate. I need to exercise, whatever that is. Because 7 represents all of those things that bring us back to balance. And usually they are things like breath, release work, surrendering all we know, surrendering all I, me, my, whether it's my own or anybody else's, even everybody else's. Because often we end up in dynamics that aren't just of our own making. Yes, we play a part, for sure, but often, especially in the mental realm, we can, shall we say, begin to channel dynamics that aren't actually just ours. They're also part of collective I, whether it just be between two people or whether it be wider. So 7 really is the place that asks us, prompts us, and also reminds us of the fact that there is such a thing as universal mind, universal wisdom. And when we choose to meditate, when we choose to let go of the go, 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 of the I think, of the you versus me, of the models, any of those things and all of them, whenever we choose to let go of these things in a way that isn't about throwing them out necessarily, it's not even about devaluing them. It is about just putting them down for a second to see whether they can shift all by themselves simply because we took our hands off it. And so 7 is a place of amazing release work. 7 is the place where we release our grip on the center, or our ownership on the center of the movie we're currently in, so as to check, so as to test whether anything more that's really good, that's really helpful and productive and constructive can come through right now for everybody's sake in a way that ends up as win-win. Seven, on a spiritual level, is a place where everything is okay. Everyone is okay. There is no me versus you, black versus white. That doesn't mean that 7 in that state or at that level does not embrace the colours black and white, you and me, yeah? But at the end of the day, everything's linked. At the end of the day, there is universe, there is universal wisdom, landscape, flow. 7 periods ask us, through often what is not quite right, to come back to that state, to consciously choose it, so as to help it grow louder than the egoic realm, louder than the egoic presentation, better than it was. The last thing I'll point out for this month's monthly update is the fact that this month's chart not only saw 4 7s, and that's including the 2 for this year's chart, so that amplifies everything I've just said, but also 2, it saw 7 3s. Now 3 is going with the flow. That doesn't mean, sit on the couch and do nothing, take your hands off, apathy. 3 is the number of flow. 3 represents the fact that life is flow, and that the flow is wide enough for everybody, that there is more than enough room, more than enough supply for everybody's sake. And this is where 3 and 7 can dance a merry dance, especially when we are overly in the egoic wavelengths. Simply because 7 again can see blinkered mind. It can see tunnel visioned eye, fixated eye, obsessive eye, yeah. And often that comes out of the models that we embrace. 3 asks us, just like 7 does, to release all of that, to make room for universal flow to come back in as a healing mechanism, as a correcting mechanism, as a liberating mechanism, but also as an informing mechanism. because both 7 and 3 want us to be practically wise. Both 7 and 3, any number really, want us to access all that the universe has to show and share and provide so that we can reach the potential we know we're here for. And yet, again, to do this, we, as egoic beings, we're asked regularly to let go of ourselves, to let go of the pushing and the pulling, the making happen. Not because those things in themselves are wrong, but they can become overdone in a way that all of a sudden self is no longer receiving. Self is just making happen. But then how can self receive if it's filled the landscape with I, me, my? So on that note, on a more practical level, what I'd like to suggest for the rest of October, especially if you've been feeling hot-pokered, cornered, overloaded, bombarded, take the time out that you sense you need to come back to zero. Zero is the beginning of everything, and everything starts on the energetic level. And as corny as that can sound some days, it's true. The more we make room for the universe to feature with us, in amongst us, for us, and even in spite of us, the more universal dynamics drop in to guide, to protect, to heal, to clarify, and also help everyone manifest exactly what they sense is possible, exactly what they're sensing they're here for. We're not here as practical jokes. Universe isn't here as a practical joke. Universe doesn't play practical jokes. It's only egoic self that buys into those theories and shuts those dynamics out to its own detriment. So all the very best to you for the remainder of October. Again, exercise, meditate, yoga, stretch, just sitting looking at a natural view in a way that you become re-inspired, in a way that you let the breeze clear you, talk to you, carry messages and insights, realizations. This is such a month that wants to equip people with the positivity and the sense of what's coming next as a continuing cycle of change, liberation, upgrade, and release from all those things that really don't suit people anymore, be they of their own making, be they of society's production, or be they whatever else they might be. So thank you very much for listening to my monthly update for 2023's October. I hope it's added a little bit of value. Please, if you need, get in contact via the website psychicandenergywork.com.au. Travel well. Know you're travelling well. Get out of your mind. Let the universe in.